Hello, and welcome once again to the Roundtable, your weekly publishers and editors podcast here at the American Mind. I'm your host, Spencer Clavin, associate editor of the Claremont Review of Books and vice regent in charge of sweaters at the American Mind. I'm joined this week by managing editor Mike Sabo and publisher and president Ryan Williams. Plus, is this the second week in a row, third week in a row, Matt, that you've been back? Okay, it's beginning to become a habit with us. We should keep it up. It's good to see you all for our Thanksgiving special episode. We're all ramping up into the holiday season. As I think we said last week, we really will well and truly try to log off and take a little bit of time with family for this great national holiday. But before we go, we thought we'd bring you a bit of a lighter episode, tell you a little bit about our plans, answer some of your listener questions, which you've sent in, and as always, discuss a little bit of the news of the week. So we'll start with this meeting between none other than the dynamic duo, Donald Trump and Zohran Mamdani. That meme that you may have seen online with Paul Rudd comes to mind here. Look at us. Who would have thought? Not me. You get these photo ops from time to time that really kind of say 1,000 words. We've got these pictures now from the Oval Office of Trump and Mamdani absolutely cheesing, grinning together for the cameras. They arranged this meeting. They sat down together on Friday in D.C. I'm reading here from the CNN survey. This is what Mamdani told CNN. He said, "Our conversation focused on New York City, and I think that is a point of shared focus," Mamdani told CNN on Sunday. "A point of shared admiration for the city that we both call home, and a city that is in danger of becoming a museum where working people once were." I don't know about you guys. Maybe you've had a different reaction, but to me, this is the twist that once it happens, you realize was totally always inevitable, but you never quite saw it coming. When Mamdani was elected mayor of New York, everyone said, well, they're going to use each other as foils. They're going to fight back and forth, and each one is going to be the other's bogeyman. Trump will be able to say, look at this socialist mayor in New York. Mamdani will be able to say, look at this fascist president in the White House. And this will be actually quite useful as grist for the rhetorical mill for both of them. Now, instead, we've got kind of an unlikely buddy comedy being staged here. It's probably not going to stop the spats between them. In fact, one of the funniest parts of this was when one of the reporters asked Mamdani, do you still think of Trump as a fascist? And Mamdani started to answer that question before Trump cut him off and said something like, don't worry, you can say it. It's easier than explaining, which is 100% correct. No notes for Trump on that one. But it is an amazing little episode. I mean, what do you guys make of this? Was this a surprise to you in any way? Did you, like me, think, oh, of course, once you saw it happening? And what does it portend, if anything, for the future of these two politicians and the movements that they represent?
It's maybe not more complicated than he just likes New York and wanted to drag Mamdani, especially after what he'd said about Trump, into the Oval Office, and he thought that'd be funny. But also, Trump is having difficulty in polling with millennials and Zoomers, especially who are non-white. So I suspect that was also in his mind too, to kind of be cordial and friendly and normal with Mamdani wouldn't hurt him with groups that he needs. I think I heard the sound of a few foreheads being slapped in frustration on Capitol Hill, because the Republicans were trying to paint Mamdani as their opposition, and then Trump's bear hugging him in the Oval Office. I also thought it was pretty amusing that at times Mamdani looked like he was in a hostage video. He did not look at ease that whole meeting. So it just makes for good TV. I think that's why Trump did it more than anything. But Mamdani's right. They both love New York. So I think Trump's, it'll be a bit of a rope-a-dope. He's being friendly and wants to be accommodating, but I'm sure Mamdani will screw it up in various ways, and Trump will be always reserves the right to be critical of you, even after he smiled at you and shook your hand. So I don't think it's that complicated, but it did make it for good television.
No, I agree with that. I don't think this is kind of typical Trump in a way. I mean, he always kind of does something different than sometimes what you'd expect. People think he's some monster and he's, kind of joking and, laughing it up with Mamdani in the White House. So, I mean, look, I mean, he's been friends with Democratic politicians going back 30, 40 years. This is not a huge surprise. I think the interesting thing is, does this kind of undercut Elise Stefanik in her race for governor? I know, Ryan, that like you said, that, some people probably were not happy about, just how jovial Trump was with him in the White House. So there might be some blowback with that. But yeah, I mean, it smashes. I think Trump had a lot in his mind about what this would communicate. And I think the biggest one is that, Mandami may call Trump some fascist or whatever, but it's like, you don't go and laugh it up with Hitler. You don't shake his hand. You don't do those things. So, the words are just going to become more and more meaningless. And I think Trump is just trying to diffuse the situation. First of all, trying to help himself, but also trying to reserve judgment for, I think, the inevitable first, cataclysmic problem under, his Mandami's, mayoral campaign in New York City and his, as mayor. There's going to be something that's going to be happening that's going to come down the pike that's going to make him look bad. And Trump is going to try to preserve, I think, definitely the situation where, he looks like the better man.
That's interesting. I mean, I think it's like, as everyone's saying, it's classic Trump. It defies old media rules, and he likes to change things up. I mean, sometimes to his own detriment, but he loves to throw the reverse. It's why he hates to reveal what his plan is. He wants to keep everyone in suspense. He's a decade-long reality TV star who knows how to script reality. Because reality TV is scripted, but it's also impromptu. It's not acting, but it is scripted in a way. And so, I mean, he created his own space for incredible theater, and I think you're right. It defangs. He has this way of defanging people. It takes away from Mamdani as the big bad person. And there's some people on the right who think it was a dumb idea. Maybe Trump even. Just wanted to meet him and then was really taken by him. But I think this is just classic Trump's instincts, whether he consciously thinks about it or not. I'm sure he had lots of discussions about this and explicitly. But his instinct is you come on in here, let's talk. And then he has this way of hanging people, and part of it comes from there's someone who said this to me years ago, and it was just seems so true about him. That he knows, some part of him knows that he can't read people. There's a part of him that there's a part of him that is not normal and makes him talented in other ways, but there's a defect where he constantly, like a bat, has to throw out radar signals and ask everyone what's going on, and that's what he does. He asks obvious questions all the time of everybody, and this is a very useful tool for him. And so I kind of see this as a similar situation where, I'll bring you on. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to get you on the world stage. And by the way, you are the, person in New York. I care about New York. You care about New York. Let's see how that works out. Right. And he does this even with his own team. I'm hoping that when he asked Brooke Rollins, for instance, this idea that you had a Secretary of Agriculture, he said one day, to basically give amnesty to hotel workers and farm workers. That was your idea, right, Brooke? But we have to do it, right, Brooke? Right in front of everyone. And then on Monday, Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, who's I don't have any grudge against. She's a incredibly good political operator, good at many things, but I think she's instinctually wrong on some of these issues. She went out that next day and basically gave a speech there will be no amnesty. And this is after Trump publicly said, but this is a good idea, right? It's like when you see him with Susie Wiles say, but you think you're doing a good job, right? And she is. But he gets you out in public and you're kind of like, well, maybe there are changes coming. I don't know, right? and this is where he knows Mamdani is a lunatic and the enemy, but he defangs him. He gets him in public. So potentially, in this case, in this case, not potentially, he's going to hang him later. And Mamdani is a little bit. He was very good, I thought. Actually, we should give him props. This is the world's largest stage for real, right? In the most powerful room in the world. And he did pretty good. I mean, I think he was a little bit over his skis, like the hostage videos thing is right, but he did pretty well. But Trump got him, right? He got him on camera in that moment, and now whatever happens next happens next.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a way of calling Mamdani's bluff, which is maybe just another way of looking at the thing you just said, Matt, that he's defanging him. Right? Because now people are saying, in reaction, people who would have otherwise perhaps been sympathetic to Mamdani or kind of taken in by his shtick, like, wait, so you think this guy is a fascist authoritarian dictator, but you also don't mind kind of doing photo ops with him? Like, how does that work, right? What does that mean? And one of the funny things about Trump is that although he does also talk about people in this very over-the-top way, he doesn't say things like, I would never meet with this person. Like he's out there. One of the big accusations against him is, he's palling it up with Putin, or he's chumming around with Xi Jinping, right? It's like, well, right, because he has that kind of, welcome to all comers attitude. Let's see what sort of deal we can make. And the Mamdani wing has this whole thing about, well, these people should be outside the realm of normal politics. Like we should not legitimize or countenance or platform or whatever verb, right? We shouldn't let these people into the circle of acceptable possible opinions. And I was just reading this transcript from an episode of The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God. This is probably not part of our listeners' regular media diet, but this is a big radio show. Charlemagne with an A and the also with an A. And he goes on this rant about, like, after this meeting, I don't want to hear people talk about fascist, authoritarian, communist, whatever, if you're just going to turn around and meet with these people. And the reason was very interesting. I actually thought it was a pretty sophisticated little rant about political rhetoric, because he said, people back home take you seriously. We go to our Thanksgiving dinners and our families get torn apart, right? We ruin our holidays by arguing as if we were on opposite sides of a civil war. But then the people that teach us to speak that way turn right around and they meet and they shake hands and they make deals and they go have a beer afterward, just like they always do in politics. And so this is actually empty for the people that are saying, throwing these epithets around, but then people back home take it seriously and it makes our lives inestimably worse. At the far extreme of that, it creates opportunities for political violence. It spurs, spite and partisan hatred, et cetera, et cetera. And this is something which, like, George Orwell is writing about in 1946. I will try to keep this as brief as possible since it's my current nerdy obsession, but I've been digging through the records of political euphemism in the mid 20th century. And I came across this incredible book called the Lingua Tertii Imperii. I think that got that right. It's the language of the Third Reich, and it's by this philologist who lived in Germany during the rise of the Third Reich, and it's all about kind of how the German language changed as Nazism rose. And of course, there are all these amazing parallels between that and what happens to the Russian language under Stalin, that ultimately authoritarianism has a kind of recognizable set of effects upon language, including hollowing out significant words, like taking these big words with a lot of emotional heft and then overusing them so much that they come to mean almost nothing. And this guy, the author of this book about Nazism, he names 3 words that sort of mark the beginning of the rise of the Nazis. One of which, the most important one, is historic, which I thought was like kind of wild given the use of that word today. But everything in the German kind of political lexicon becomes historisch when Hitler is rising to power. And this, of course, is also a word that like means almost nothing to us now. And it's all about how these words they get repeated over and over again, and then they suddenly become simply just like cattle prods for raising emotion. And that too is something that Trump is weirdly, I mean, I doubt very much that he would nerd out with me about this, but he's exposing this feature of our politics, that a lot of these words that the public takes seriously are actually just these sort of cynical, empty meaningless signifiers. And Mamdani's power depends on people taking those words seriously. So being deflated like that, or having that kind of supposedly epic conflict reduced to the level of run-of-the-mill mundane politics, is actually probably to Trump's advantage as well. Like, it makes Mamdani's whole epic history of Ragnarok between the fascists and the resistance look kind of silly.
Yeah, you just real quick on that. I mean, I think that the media point is well taken. The Orwell point as well. I mean, what Trump is so good at is media, right? But in the way that you have to be a statesman today. I mean, Reagan was an actor; he's a reality TV star. There's a lot to study in that. But what he does when he does that, it's like with a wink and a nod to the camera, like exposing to you something.
Right. Yes, it's breaking the fourth wall. Yeah.
It's like great entertainment, but it's also, there's no fourth wall, and he's looking at you like, you saw that too, right? Just telling you what I think, and he'll be able to turn at any time to the camera and just say whatever the hell he wants. And that's a very, very, very powerful magic.
Yeah, and a very digital age kind of move as well, which has always been one of his strong suits too, is like understanding how you can do this when media is so diffuse. Okay, I think we've talked, as usual on this show, we've put as much intellectual weight as can be placed onto this one passing moment of ultimately forgettable banality, and then some, and probably more, so we can leave that behind. We wanted to take some questions from our dear listeners. We do this occasionally. We always get these great questions and answer like 1.5 of them in the time that we have. I doubt that this will be any different, but we did put out a call for questions. I know, Mike, you got some also from listeners directly. And so we wanted to just spend a little bit of time on your maybe bigger picture questions. I don't know. The first one, which is from our friend Megan Basham, is actually perfect segue from everything we've been talking about. What is the key cause of the current civil war on the right? Anyone want to take that first? Maybe first say, what is that civil war, and then why?
Everyone tells me it's the Jews. I don't know. It's a joke.
There's a thought.
It's a joke.
It's certainly not that, but yeah, Matt was joking, of course. I don't know. I think it's, if you had to, I want to make it wider than the Israel question, because I think it's a distraction, revealed in part by the extent to which the identifying country of origin of a lot of these, what I called in one of our text exchanges, sort of MAGA sock puppet accounts. And they're all, especially the ones kind of sowing division on the right on the question of Israel or Jews or whatever. It sort of runs a spectrum from just sowing more mundane division to going nuclear with the question of Israel and Jews. A lot of them are, they're accounts in Poland, Africa, India. So I think it's been revealed to us over the last week that a lot of this intra-right warfare is fake, and we've talked about this before, and is being taken. The nature of modern social media is being taken advantage of by some of our foreign adversaries to sow division on the right and in the country more generally. But I think the main division remains the extent to which the old foreign policy wing of the Republican Party, which is bigger than neoconservatism, but maybe having neoconservative interventionism at its core, and then at the periphery of it, just sort of more old school Cold War thinking on the right that now seems a bit anachronistic. The approach to America as the world's policeman, et cetera, et cetera. And then the non-interventionists. I think that's, so you could say it's the Dispatch at one end and the American Conservative at the other, or Commentary at the one end, which and American Conservative at the other. I think that's a big source of the fighting. I think the rest is too confusing, and all the domestic policy issues cut across many lines. So I think that's the main division. It's at least the most has the highest volume online, and predictably, given the last couple of years and the October 7th and the Israel-Gaza war, it's flared up more than it normally simmered at
I think, yeah, I mean, you have institutions breaking down, you have denunciations, cancellations, especially during, kind of the rise of the wokesters, circa 2020, you had COVID-19, you had all these things. And I think really Dan McCarthy wrote a great piece for us today, just trying to figure out what exactly is going on here. I think a big part of it is, look, the shared ground of our public life is still pretty much squarely on liberalism. So you have one side that says, oh, this guy's an anti-Semite, this guy's a racist, and then you have the other side that says, well, no, I'm not. I'm anti-anti. I'm anti this, and I'm. So they're trying to basically show how much that they're not, and all that. And McCarthy explains, you're fighting on the ground of liberalism. You're trying to prove a negative. This is not possible. What we need to do is actually break away from that altogether. And he's not saying that those things, anti-Semitism, racism, aren't happening. They are. But how do we defeat them is something different than what liberalism has to offer. He's saying basically that, look, I mean, we have to look at particularity. We have to look at the particulars of our nation. We have to look at our own history, our own traditions, and break kind of this liberal kind of universalism that any particularity is kind of dissolved. I mean, if you look at America, yes, you look at the Declaration, we talked about all men are created equal, universal political principles, but that they were being assented to and spoken about for a specific people. So I think having both those views in mind, the universal and the particular, and trying to get to the means of that is really the key here. And I think, you have people even kind of looking at, what happened with, Robert George leaving the Heritage Foundation. He was on the board. And, you have certain people then pointing to Robert George, his friendship with Cornel West. Okay, that's fine. Cornel West is, a Marxist professor, whatever. I think we all know what, there are obviously huge differences in politics there. But then Cornel West himself is friends with Louis Farrakhan, who is, I mean, a notorious extreme anti-Semite that Cornel West has actually written about. He said, that's not good. So I think people look at that and say, okay, but what is the discrepancy? Why is cancellation okay in one, way and not in the other? So not only is it universalism, but it's this kind of hierarchy of morality where for certain people it's okay and for certain people it's not. That's, I think, what people want to really destroy and want to take down. I think the hypocrisy is too much. They see through it, and I think they really want to do something about it. And I think that the fissures of really the liberal order are really creeping up. And I think, we're to an age now, the age of Trump, where I think people see it's actually possible to break away from, the social life that we've known and hopefully get to one that is just more congruent with Republican government.
I guess because you guys spoke first, I get the benefit of zooming out. Makes it easy. First, I mean, a positive note, which I just want to keep repeating, which is that when you win in a new coalition that could be majority coalition for a generation, a 55% sort of majority, and you bring in all these new people to the coalition, new groups, new elite interests, then what happens when you win is you fight about who's in control and what the hierarchy is within that coalition, all the fissures and fractions, because in any coalition in a two-party system, right? Think about how insane our system is in a way. It works for very good reasons, but I say that seriously. It does. The two-party system does actually work, but the way that it works is sort of crazy because you have a coalition of, on one side and the other in a country with now hundreds of millions of people. Maha versus big, dissident tech. Do they agree on everything? No. Is there a Venn diagram in there? Yeah. Is there shared part? Yeah. They're going to have to find that out by fighting. So when you win, you're going to fight within a majority coalition. The whole, everyone sees now that this is about shaping the right in the future. And what does it mean? So it's fine if everyone's fighting. That's good. It's a sign of health. It's a sign that we won. On the flip side of that, though, I think that there's two things. There's foreign policy, which you guys talked about, which is very much a marker for new right versus old right. And unfortunately, everything to do with Israel is sort of, that's become the major symbol of this, for good and bad. Okay. On the other side, also, what's going on is something that I'm even more concerned about in a way. I think that I think that we're going to resolve the Israel question. I think that most people in the coalition are not hating on Jews, but there's a lot of shock jock stuff out there. Could be wrong, but that's what I think. Right now, there's a real serious question about how serious this coalition is and how serious MAGA is about actually reforming the government. So part of the fraction now is the base and others in the coalition who, the fringe outliers, the people outside the system are the first ones to speak because they don't have a lot to lose and they don't have to worry about prudence. But there's a lot of concern about whether or not we're adequately attacking the real core challenge, which is to reform the administrative state, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, which Claremont and really the entire right has been talking about for freaking 70 years. And this thing is metastasized into something really nasty, something that will make a conspiracy theorist out of your normie McKinsey employee if they start looking at reality and just seeing it for what it is. And so right now, there really is a lot of consternation about whether or not this administration is serious enough about that central task. And I think that the voters don't care about either of these coalitions or political parties. They're upset about that. And so you see potential fracture along that axis, which I think is a very, very deep one and a concerning one. And just to go back to the foreign policy, this is also just a positive note. This is a debate that needs to happen because of some of the sensitivities that people have, particularly to the Israel issue and question. There's been a lot of people not talking about it and not arguing about it. And I think it's actually a proxy for something else about America and the rest of the world and so forth. But we won't resolve it on either side without really letting it out and engaging each other in a productive fashion. And I think that's a great thing that Claremont has published this article that Ryan tweeted. And there's a lot today in American Mind, the stuff you're doing in American Mind. There's just a lot there to hash out. And just by allowing a space for that, that's a really healthy thing that I think can give one hope for a unification in the coming years.
Yeah, that's so well said, Matt, that I almost don't want to add anything to it, but maybe a footnote to what you said about the voters, who are an important and kind of neglected aspect of this. Usually when we talk about intra-right fighting, we're talking about influencers and politicians and leaders, all of whom have
influencers and politicians. I mean,
yeah, maybe that's being generous to the politicians, I suppose. But we're talking about people who overvalue their own importance almost professionally, almost, get paid to overvalue their own importance, but ultimately are suing for the support of the public. That's, still technically how our government works. You'll be pleased to know on this here, Thanksgiving 2025, we are still nominally a representative government where people elect leaders. And it matters because of what you said, Matt, that the right is in this position having won an election resoundingly, astonishingly, really conclusively. And I think that the reason for that win is related to these various issues that we're currently fighting about, but not the same as these issues that we're fighting about. I think we won in 2025 because people in general looked at what was going on in the highest echelons of power and said, to be as blunt as possible, what the f*** is going on? I mean, there are so many of these things that you've just listed that if you abstract away and you haven't been following step by step, moment by moment, and you're not, however many 10, 20 steps down the line in the argument, but you're just kind of lifting up your head, maybe you're voting for the first time this election, maybe you only think about politics every 4 years when there is a presidential election or whatever. And you come to this contest between Trump and Kamala, and the terms of the dispute all seem just completely cuckoo bananas. Like, the most effective thing that Trump did, of course, was pinning Kamala on, let's give transgender surgeries to prison inmates, because it was like, wait. What even, there's like 5 sets of assumptions you have to make before you even get to that dispute. And suddenly that's like one of the options on the table for president of the United States. Like, there's just a level of like, what are we actually talking about here? And I think that is instinctual for people, both in their reaction to the administrative state, which they find completely counterintuitive and bizarre whenever they have to make contact with it in their normal lives. The disconnect between that apparatus of governance and what they were taught in civics class is supposed to be how America works is simply too extraordinary for people to process or to let slip. And then the woke stuff, which also was so drastically removed from their daily lives that they just thought, whatever is going on, it ain't that. Like, this ain't it, right? And so that general reaction to a whole bunch of things, some of which are leftist policies, some of which are just kind of the state of affairs as it currently is, produced this 2025 victory, which was motivated by a very like basic normie cri de coeur. Like, what is going on? Just roll this back. And I think the right and the Republicans effectively managed to position themselves genuinely as conduits for that sentiment. Like, they won that fight fair and square. But now they are in the position of having to like act on that sentiment through the various weird internecine rabbit warrens and disputes that we are currently having. And I think like a lot of this is people jockeying for the position of representative of like that normie sentiment, many of whom are singularly ill qualified to do so. Like, a lot of these people, let's be frank, are equally deranged and politics brained as the people that they displaced, but like just slightly more connected to reality than, let's give transgender drugs to prison inmates or whatever. So I guess that's just another way of looking at the Civil War on the right from the outside, whereas we've been looking at it from the inside and rightly trying to figure out, well, who, is going to win. You can also look at it from the other side and say, well, like, mostly this is just people auditioning for the support of people who aren't terminally right-wing and terminally online, and who have not in the past been a member of our coalition, but are now kind of conservative curious and need to know that the right is basically in agreement with them about how the government should work, about how normal human life should go. And I do think that like some of the options that we are offering, like, sun your balls and live on a farmstead, it's like that's related to what people are feeling. But if you're just coming into the conversation for the first time, you're like, what? Like, I'm I have student loan debt to pay. What is this ball sunning? Like, what is the raw milk stuff? There's like a lot of different, there's like a meeting happening between normies who are not scared to be conservative, but aren't necessarily yet conservative, and, professional conservatives who have developed an elaborate kind of architecture of thought, and some of it good, some of it bad, about like how to execute on this mission. That's all.
For all our listeners, real quick, not that there's anything wrong with sunning your balls or living on a farm.
No, indeed. We need to clarify both that Israel is not behind this entire dispute, and also sunning your balls and living on a farm, completely acceptable. Off you go. But maybe think about how to sell that lifestyle to like mom of 5 that has just finally decided that she's going to buck the trend at her book club and maybe not vote for Kamala Harris. Okay. Can we do another question? Are you guys good with
Yeah.
with that? Anyone
Let's go.
have anything else you want to say? All right. Okay, cool. Let's see. There's a lot of good ones here. Actually, well, so many excellent options. Let's go with Colin Redimer. why haven't we seen more arrests of Antifa? I'm very interested. I wish our friend Kyle Scheidler were here to opine, and maybe he'll write into us. But I'm curious what you guys think. Why haven't we seen more arrests of Antifa? I suppose he means under the second Trump administration.
You've seen scattered arrests of them when they assault federal officers. I think the extent to which you can arrest them federally is somewhat limited. So, and I suspect there are parts of the Justice Department that are not that interested. It's a big building. And in many ways, you talk to some of our alums in DC, and despite the leadership change at Justice with the change of parties controlling the presidency, it really is one of the epicenters of resistance just as a bureaucracy. And it's perfectly predictable. Well, we've talked about this. I don't need to belabor the point. The kind of myth of the modern independent Justice Department that grew up after Watergate and has infused the ethos of that building, especially the career people there, I think makes it difficult to properly enforce federal law on occasions. The spirit of the place is not in it, even though the leadership might be. I think that's one reason. And, there's this, which Kyle's also, I think, written and tweeted about the fact that Kyle Scheidler, who Spencer mentioned, our friend who works at the Center for Security Policy and is an expert on left-wing extremism, among other things, this quote-unquote designation of Antifa as a domestic terror organization was it's just smoke and mirrors or bells and whistles or, pick your euphemism. It doesn't really mean anything. So now if you were to designate it a foreign terrorist organization, you could have more federal law enforcement stuff at your disposal. So I think it's a mix of all of those things. But, this case that Kyle's actually consulting on in Texas of Antifa, trying to, or not trying to, but shooting at an ICE facility. I mean, those people are all being tried, and they'll I think, suspect will all be locked up in Texas. So I guess what Colin wants is some sort of more mass arrest approach to this problem. And there's just a lot of things standing in your way if you want to do that quickly. From
one of which is you can't actually arrest people for being in Antifa, like to be clear. Yeah. Right.
You got to catch them conspiring to do something, or or just out in the street punching police officers or federal agents. Then you can arrest. But yeah, the mass arrests I think are that people are hoping for. You just, for a lot of good reasons in the run of American history, you can't just do that. You need to have an actual reason. Now, again, the foreign terrorist organization angle, I think, has some play because Antifa is a transnational organization, especially in Europe and the United States. So maybe there's more there. And I'm sure that smart people at the Justice Department are working on that.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can arrest people for being an Antifa. I mean, what are the rules about foreign terrorist organizations? Just that you can subject them to more scrutiny, perhaps?
Yeah, once you designate them, you still can't arrest them on the spot. You have to, but you can surveil them more and restrict their ability to fund themselves through banking and all that sort of stuff. So you can kind of unperson them, or get rid of a lot of their means of organization and funding. I think that would be the main way to dismantle it. And look, it could be the case that the Justice Department, and I think I've heard, sort of murmurs about this. You saw it in J.D. Vance's speech when he hosted Charlie Kirk's show. He said they are looking into the funding streams for quasi-domestic disturbance terrorist stuff. So that would be another way to go after them without having to arrest them all. You just dry up their funds and prevent their ability to be, kind of bought and paid for activists, even though most of them, their heart's in it also. But, they got to get around the country. They need to feed themselves. We've seen pictures of a lot of them. A lot of them are not gainfully employed. So, you've got to keep them on their feet and clothed and fed and organized. And that takes money and people.
I think, just to back up what Ryan said, I know the State Department, I think pretty recently, so they categorized 4 Antifa cells outside the United States as foreign terrorist organizations. I think one was in Italy. Can't remember where the other 3 are off the top of my head. You do have the problem, though, of, kind of good sounding words, but that like domestic terrorist organization that really don't go anywhere. And I think, like Kyle pointed out, so he wrote a great memo for us months ago, how to dismantle far left extremist networks. And basically, I mean, the overall problem has been the FBI, et cetera, intelligence, CIA, et cetera. They've basically had a tunnel vision either on, kind of the far right, especially after Charlottesville, you have, supposedly cells of fascists all over the place that they're going to focus on. Or just simply overly broad categories that don't really have proper categories that really capture what the left is doing. So he proposed a far left violent extremist category, and he said, must include Antifa, anarchists, autonomous Marxists, socialists, Marxist-Leninists, Maoists, communist extremists. And just to ensure that these categories are written in the law, we actually know what each group is, what their networks are, what the front operations for a lot of these groups are. There's a lot of that going on too. So I think part of this problem is we are just so behind the 8 ball, I think, still on this, that, it's so early on in the game that, the end of the beginning, it hasn't even come yet. And that there a lot more work just needs to be done.
So I'll be quick. To echo what Ryan was saying in the beginning. First, it's an enormous task because you have a bunch of different people in law enforcement need to be involved. There has to be a crime. There has to be a recognizable category, to Mike Sabo and the incredible essay that he published. His point, there's not even a bureaucratic category. All the bureaucrats hate you and hate this idea. You're done. You're not getting anywhere with them. So you got to play the language game and put the right coin in the slot, as Kyle Schindler, wrote up a plan for. Not all of that, it appears to me, has been implemented. And there's this problem in the administration, and I'm going to the positive first, that's understandable, which is like a coordination problem. Mike Howell has talked about this when it comes to the auto pen. Auto pen this is cut and dry like crimes. You can prosecute people. It's very clear. This is a serious constitutional issue, and there are actual statutory laws that were violated and could be prosecuted pretty easy. But you got the White House General Counsel, you got multiple people at DOJ, like who's on first, who's going to do this, and there's a coordination problem. And so this is very similar. So first you say domestic terrorists. One route is first you say an actual terrorist organization, which means international. There's no such thing as a category for domestic. And then you got to track them down overseas, and then you track them here from that, right? Legally speaking. So you have to say, okay, this is a terrorist group in another country, but the money came from here over here for people to commit crimes. And now all of a sudden I have a way to activate the bureaucracy. But then, of course, the entire bureaucracy is not on our side, as Ryan said. So the spirit isn't there. So let me say all that and more. I'll just say, not speaking for Claremont, completely on my own. I think there's also the problem that I've just come to the conclusion that Kash Patel, and I wish this wasn't true, is not doing a good job, and neither is Pam Bondi. I know that will shock the audience, but that's my conclusion. I like both of them. I have no personal beef with them, but there's a leadership problem as well in two of the most important agencies that you would need to take on this Herculean task. And I think a lot of people are coming to that same conclusion.
Well, I have a very simple answer to this question, Colin, which is, don't you know, Antifa is not an organization. It's an idea. it's just more of a feeling. It's more of a vibes thing than anything, really. Silly Colin. No, I have nothing to add to the excellent answers that have been given, and predictably, as I foretold, we are going to get through about 2 of these questions. We've got others that are very good, and I would like especially to address this one about when is criticism of Israel legitimate and when is it anti-Semitic. But maybe we should do another questions round on a future episode after we all get back from the holidays, because we have a slightly extended, usually at the end of the show, if you're just joining us for the first time, we like to give a recommendation or 2 of a lighter item, something fun we're reading or watching or what have you. And we're going to just extend that segment a little bit and make it Thanksgiving themed, because as I mentioned up top, we take Thanksgiving seriously here at the Claremont Institute, despite the fact that this show tends to be about contemporary politics. We are generally, as a gang, in the business of reflecting at a higher order on the legacy and heritage of our nation, the founding ideas that helped make it what it is. and hopefully applying those from time to time to the scrum of daily politics. But on a day like this, we do want to make sure we actually practice what we preach, step back from the keyboard, think a little bit about the bigger project that we're all involved and invested in as Americans, and dare I say it, if it's not a bad word in the internet age, give thanks, express gratitude for things, which is from the very beginning what this holiday was supposed to be all about. I'm sure our listeners already know the history of Thanksgiving as a holiday, that it was recommended or encouraged by Congress, but not made official, only proclaimed by Washington the first time around at the end of the 18th century, and then sort of gradually took its place in the liturgical calendar, the secular liturgical calendar of our civic year, until made national by Lincoln, and then not until the 20th century, I believe, was it voted in officially at its current date by Congress. So formally speaking, there's a long history to making this the real deal. It hasn't been an official national holiday in its present form for all that long. But spiritually speaking, of course, it goes back before the founding of the country to the Pilgrims and to the very spirit of what it meant to come, to risk life and limb, to leave your family and home behind, and to arrive on these shores, kissing the ground, as William Bradford records in his Annals of the Journey, and thanking the God of all that it was possible to set sail, escape religious persecution, and found this great city on a hill. So we have a few things to do. First of all, we're going to just do what most families, I think, do at Thanksgiving, or should, which is go around the table and say something that we are thankful for. I'll start. I'm going to play somewhat against type, and I'm going to give thanks for being alive in the digital information age. And specifically for being kind of a grown adult in the information age who was not born kind of and steeped it directly into the iPad world, but got to kind of grow up alongside some of this technology. I know that there are a ton of pathologies that come along with being raised on a digital device. We've all seen the videos of babies treating magazines as if they were iPads because they don't know how to read text without scrolling. All of this is dystopian and terrifying. And in fact, one of the things we do a lot on this show, and one of the things I personally do, is kind of rail against the many misapprehensions and philosophical errors that we are making when our technology outstrips our theology and our philosophy. All of that remains true, but perhaps that's all the more reason to take a second and realize that it's not all bad. It's not just an unremitted disaster, what's happened in the last several decades. In fact, we're living through something, I think, as revolutionary and transformational as the invention of the printing press was in its day. And just like the invention of the printing press, the invention of digital technology has come along with all sorts of upheavals, all sorts of theological reconsiderations, some good, some bad. And also, however, with a tremendous explosion of new energy, new ideas, new access to those ideas. I'm, as I mentioned, writing my book about language right now. And so just this morning, I had occasion to marvel at the fact that I was thinking, here's a passage in Solzhenitsyn where he uses the word that is translated as comrade. I wonder if that's tovarish, the kind of classic, address that we get in so many documents from the Soviet era. I was able just to pull up a website and pay some nominal fee to download the original Russian of Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. Instantaneously, it was on my computer. And without access to a research library, I was able to write, I think, a pretty passable, scholarly treatment of the evolution of this word over time in Russian and in English. This is something that a person like me, if I had been born 100 years ago, I would have done unspeakable things to get access to these kinds of tools. I would have probably done and said things I would be completely ashamed of just to have one chance at sitting at the grand console and looking things up the way that I can now. Not for nothing, but it does in fact enable a lot of the circumvention that we've celebrated on this show, people going around official sources of information to do their own research. And again, I think each one of us is kind of given one of the many things we don't choose but are given is our station, our position in the grand march of history. I just happen to have been born at a time when I was able to learn to live without this technology, to operate and do research without it, but also young enough that when it came along, I was able to become pretty conversant in it. And I feel the same way actually about the AI tools that we're now starting to get our hands on. And I just feel lucky. I feel lucky to have been born at this very particular time, given what my livelihood is and what I love doing. It is really cool to live in a time when you don't have to rely on official gatekeepers for information and for knowledge. Who wants to go next?
Mine's going to be pretty ho-hum, but I feel it strongly, so I'm going to do it anyway. I'm thankful for my wife and my kids, and also for my wife's family. We had the occasion to experience gratitude at their willingness to give us a bunch of time. So Amelia and I flew out to the CRB 25th anniversary gala, which meant leaving our almost 3 and almost 7-year-old with the grandparents and with their auntie who lives in Dallas. And it was nice. I think Amelia said it was the first time we had flown without children since, I think, not quite the honeymoon, which we did a year after we got married, but right around there. So it's been the better part of 7-8 years. And yeah, so I'm thankful. So we're in a postmodern, geographically speaking, marriage, in the sense that, like, I know a lot of people, a lot of listeners to this show, the kids' grandparents are in North Florida and Berkeley. Really, our only immediate family member around here is my sister-in-law. And so the fact that, they're retired, so that makes it easy, but they're in their 70s. It's a lot of work with small children. So I'm grateful for all that. Especially grateful to them too, because they find my politics appalling. So, and nonetheless, they love my kids and they love us. And so it's nice. I know a lot of people out there don't have it that well and have troubling relationships with their in-laws, or even, don't speak to each other. And there's endless stories that if you were to hear of all of them would cause you some sadness and grief. So I'm just blessed not to have that problem.
I'll actually go on the same theme of Ryan. I was thinking of my 2 kids. I have one that's 2, one that's 1. They're 14 months apart. And just the wonderful joy that they've been, who they are, their personalities you're really starting to see. I can definitely see some of myself, and then some of my wife, Erica, too, as well. And it's just fun to see that. Fun to see them grow up. My 2-year-old, he can count to 10 on his own now. He knows colors. He knows like 2/3 of the alphabet already. It's kind of crazy. But he's just picking things up left and right. He's a little sponge. My other one, almost going to be 15 months old, not quite walking yet, interested somewhat, but he is just not the kind of go-getter, almost seemingly type A that my oldest is. But I love them both very much. I'm happy to, have them, to have my wife. We've been married. We're actually going to be married for 10 years next year. So we're going to be definitely celebrating that. Very happy about that. And also we're going to we'll probably do Thanksgiving in just a second, but, thankful for both our parents, both our families. We're going to be going up to hers in Michigan tomorrow. So I'll be doing the big drive tomorrow in the minivan, taking everybody up there.
Well, unlike you guys, I'm not thankful for my wife and kids.
Yeah, screw those guys, am I right? Thank God. Thank you, Matt. I was feeling awful having been like, I love my work. And then these guys are like, my family are the best. Please help a brother out.
Honestly,
ahead.
I got all these like college kids in my house because my daughter's, here with them. It's kind of a burden more than anything, actually. No.
Okay, that's too much. That's too far.
I love you all. I'm thankful for people who don't give a shit. And what I mean by that is the people in my life who, whether we agree, disagree, you just get to a place where like you kind of, worked in a certain direction for a while. And I just appreciate people who don't care about the wrong things and are trying to do the right thing as much as humanly possible. And they kind of stand out, And so I'm thankful for those people that I know them in professional and friendly capacities, and that for all the crap coming through my phone with people trying to talk about this and that, there's just people that stand out over time, and we all have our list of them, and you can not talk to them for a while, you go hang out, but you share a kind of rootedness or groundedness in what you're trying to do, and you can tell right away that they're not in the same BS race that the grifters are. And I just, as I get older and kind of look around the cabin and think about what I'm going to do the next year and all that kind of stuff, it's just nice to know a lot of those people. And a lot of those people, not to toot our own horn, are people I met through Claremont or Claremont people, and Claremont fellows, but just having that group of people that becomes really important later on, and lets you kind of be at peace no matter what's going on in life's turmoils.
Hell yeah, the real ones. That's a good. Those are all excellent. And since and I still feel like kind of an asshole since I was talking about
I brought it back to
yeah. You really did bring it back to making me feel extra guilty. Like
I brought it back towards work. Really?
Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. Fair enough. All right,
which we should be grateful for.
Which we should be grateful for. Yes, and I will say, of course, that I'm very, very grateful for my family and love them dearly. And in fact, this will be a transition into our next subject, even more, in fact, more frivolous. The other one wasn't frivolous at all, but this will be a little lighter, and that is what you eaten. So we are going to New York to see my sister and her two kids, my nephews, and their jolly family out there. Got a bunch of stuff that we typically make for our usual Thanksgiving, but I am particularly excited, and I think this is probably what I said last year, although I didn't go back and listen. I'm particularly excited for the sweet potatoes, which are very special. They come with brown sugar and marshmallows and all sorts of other deliciousness. And I can't wait.
I'm not a huge fan of sweet potatoes, I must confess.
Jail. Straight to jail.
Especially the Thanksgiving dessert variety. Although a sweet potato pie is quite delicious, actually even better than a pumpkin pie, I will venture to say. So
just dropping bombs and moving on, Ryan. This is a lot.
We've got, it's okay. You'll be able to mock me after I say the following, which is our froofiest dish this year is a roasted cauliflower, pomegranate, hazelnut, celery, herby salad, which is actually quite delicious. But it is, I realize, a bit bougie. No, my wife used to cook for a living, so we're always trying somewhat exotic things out. And just a straight ahead roast turkey this year. Not even going to spatchcock it. Not going to smoke it. Just going to do it old style with some herb butter under the skin, a bacon wild mushroom dressing, and some gooey mac and cheese at the request of my almost 7-year-old. And then the last thing, which is actually a classic, although it sounds froofy, which is cream braised leeks. So we're actually not doing a potato this year, so very unorthodox. But
whoa, I know it's not Thanksgiving turkey unless you've had it sprinkled with caviar dust, the way Amelia makes it. I can't even make fun of Amelia because, first of all, she is the secret shadow host of this podcast. She's contributed probably more than any other Claremont spouse to opinions that have been voiced on this show, and also I've eaten her cooking, and it sounds really fancy, but it eats like good down home food. So I have no, I can't even make fun of you for it, Ryan. But I will say that I did forget my favorite Thanksgiving food of all, which is the bacon that gets wrapped around the turkey while it's cooking and then comes into its own side dish.
I do have one hack to share with everyone, because the perpetual problem, especially with a whole roasted turkey, is that your dark meat is not done. It takes longer to cook, and by the time it's done, your breast is dry. Now, a solution to that is to wrap it in bacon. But one other solution, so is to get a decent sized roasting pan and put a pizza steel or stone under it in the oven, and just put your turkey dark meat side directly onto the hot roasting pan that's heated up with the stone inside. It should cook the dark meat a little more quickly, and it tends to solve your problem. So that's my advice. If you don't have a pizza stone or steel, you could just do the same technique. Put it not on a rack, put it directly on the roasting pan.
If you don't have a pizza stone, or you're not serious, you can try.
You know, just light the fire in your cave and like do it the old-fashioned.
Exactly. Why don't you just eat it raw by the handful, you heathen? Mike, will you be eating your turkey raw by the handful?
I don't know. I mean, that's an option. I hadn't thought about that previously. So like I said, we're going to go up to my in-laws in kind of a little bit north of Lansing, Michigan. So, you know, a little bit of a drive. It'll take most of the day, especially with the kids tomorrow. But, you know, we're just going to have basic Thanksgiving fare, turkey. I think kind of like probably like how, you know, Ryan described it was going to be prepared there. Mashed potatoes are great. That's probably my favorite part. My mother-in-law does a great job with that. You know, pumpkin pie, all the basic fixings. So really looking forward to it. Also, my father-in-law, his family, they're actually going to be able to come up, and they have actually, the last time they saw my oldest, he was only 3 months old, and they have actually never met my youngest. So that'll be great for them to actually, you know, be able to see both of them and meet my youngest for the first time.
Oh, I forgot the pies. A chocolate chip pie, an old family tradition. And Amelia's making a Norman apple tart. So there's another froofy thing for you, Spencer.
There you go. Norman apple tart. Does it speak French?
With apple cider caramel in it.
Yeah. Sounds amazing, actually. I confess. Matt, will your Thanksgiving dinner speak French?
I don't know. I hope there's some queso around somewhere. I like queso. It's the one Tex-Mex thing. It's all right. So there's usually a spatchcock turkey and then a turkey that something else happens to. For years now, since we were in California, the Marsdens, who also moved with us, our good friend Matthew Marsden was from the UK and his wife is from Malta. So they weren't like Thanksgiving people. So we've always had them over. And I think he's going to try to fry one this year. He's done the whole smoker thing and whatever. I think I heard a rumor about that. But I got to go over to his house and see today or tomorrow. I haven't really poked into it because my wife was on it. And my thought right now is that there's still time if I go to Wild Fork and get some different kind of meat and just make something really good that's just not turkey. I'm not a turkey hater, but I kind of was feeling like I need to find something a little, but then I'd have to go out to a store. And I made that mistake this weekend and started to get black-pilled about America and the end of civilization. And it just reminded me of why everyone is, you know, staying at home and ordering things to their house. But I do think if I could get to this Wild Fork place, right, I think I'll be all right. I think I can find some different kind of meat. But then you have to calculate in a crowded house where now my daughter's bringing home strays, just like she used to complain about her grandparents. Like, why does Ganny always bring these random people I don't want to sit next to? Yeah, well, why are you doing that to me now, honey? You know? Now the shoe's on the other foot. There's all kinds of, you know, it's going to be very crowded. So I don't know. I mean, there'll be a lot of good food, I'm sure. I'm just here for the roller coaster ride.
Matt, just get yourself a tomahawk Wagyu ribeye and cook it just for yourself and sit down at the table with it just on your plate.
I'm thinking about getting the charcoal, you know, the old charcoal burner out, you know, and just going in the backyard, exactly, making myself something like that, and just sitting down on my own plate, like lifting it all.
It's like a personal pizza. Yeah, who could deny you that? All right, we got to do a real quick lightning round, cultural recommendations for our folks before we go. I am going to be really quick and just say +1 to Mike's previous recommendation of Pluribus, the Apple TV show from the creator of Better Call Saul. Incredibly engaging, great acting, fun concept. Definitely taking the place of Severance in my life of like an actual show that I'm interested in.
I'm going to. Everyone's raving about this Netflix 4-part series about President Garfield's election and assassination, and I'm here to tell you it sucks. I mean, the acting is great. It's good drama, but the script is weird. I think they did it on purpose. Now I'll have to go, and I don't even want to rewatch it, so I won't find out. But it seems like they switch between modern vernacular and sort of old timey talk. It doesn't really work. But my main problem with it is it's a simplified, lame morality fable, which offers the following propositions, at least between the lines. It is somewhat subtle about it, but other times not. Which is to say that the only thing standing between us and anarchy, murder, and mayhem is the permanent bureaucracy. Because as maybe some of you know, Garfield's assassination led to the Pendleton Act, which reformed the spoils system. That's kind of one of the takeaway morals of the end of it. Also, that democracy really only works because women have a say. Now, I'm not here to run down the 19th Amendment or anything, but the confection with which they illustrate that judgment, of course, it's set in the Gilded Age, so it's before the 19th Amendment, but is ham-fisted and just completely implausible. So it's like what would I call a female version of a Deus Ex Machina, Spencer?
Dea Ex Machina.
Oh, and that all of human history points towards the wonderful triumph that is the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They don't say that explicitly, but it's clearly a subtext. And I don't need to rehearse with our listeners, that my standard line, but we always have new people, so I will. The 64 Civil Rights Act, of course, was addressing a problem that was real. That is the Jim Crow South, but it quickly got appropriated by the courts and the bureaucracies and has been turned into something like a racial winners and losers spoil system. So it kind of stands for the opposite of what it was originally meant to do, but it quickly turned bad. Anyway, it's liberals defending their modern pieties somewhat subtly. The only thing that saves it is that it gets Garfield right. He seems like a very decent man, which he was, and a patriot, and the acting is great. But everyone raving about it. I sort of feel like I did when people were raving about Hamilton. We wanted to puncture that balloon too in the form of an essay by Richard Samuelson. And a lot of our friends said we were nuts. Everyone's getting excited about the founding. Kids are singing raps about it. I said, yeah, but the underlying morality of the whole thing matters, and it's progressive. So we should be again it. So I'm again Death by Lightning.
I'm going to continue on the same theme, actually from I think the past couple weeks. So a new volume from Richard Hooker. He was an Anglican cleric, from his a huge thing called Laws of Ecclesiastical Polity. So it was originally written in English, but very harder to read. So it's been updated, modernized, and this is from book 5, and it's called A House for the Word, and it's a treatise on public worship. I've just started it. It's really well done. I mean, Richard Hooker was a very intricate thinker, a lot of distinctions, a lot of nuance, and so it's great to see, especially as a Protestant, to read old Protestants who actually knew something and actually read old books and understood some of these things. So I'm very much enjoying it.
I mean, I got nothing new. The judicious Hooker would always be good to read.
That's a TV trope, I think. Yeah.
Sounds like a great TV show. I did finish The King Conqueror. It was a great ending to got exactly what they were, old man political tragedy, going for with King Harold and William the Conqueror. Good enough, worked for me. Of course, by the end of it, I was watching it alone. But that doesn't mean you won't like it. I enjoyed it. I would just encourage people to go to the good book, go to the scriptures, and read the story of the Tower of Babel one more time. Do that this week. Just read the story of the Tower of Babel, meditate on it. And I would love if someone has, maybe Spencer does, a list of literary references and discussion about it. It's the sort of thing that people have talked about for obviously a few thousand years, and it's a topic the themes of it are good to meditate upon.
Matt, you are flirting with disaster because this means I'm going to send you my chapter on the Tower of Babel that I have been writing all month. But
I want to read it. I'm sitting here.
I crave it. Can recommend Ibn Ezra on the Tower of Babel. Can recommend Dante de Vulgari Eloquentia on the Tower of Babel. Can recommend Maimonides on the Tower of Babel, but lots of good ones, and they're all in the chapter, so I will send it to you. That story freaking slaps. Everything is in that story. I completely co-sign that recommendation. Also, I guess, but no recommendation from Ryan's, which is Stephen Sondheim's Assassins, not his best musical, has a great song about and by Charlie Guiteau, James Garfield's assassin. So, if you're fed up with the Shonda Rhimes version of the history, go back and listen to the Stephen Sondheim version.
I wanted to flag for everyone quickly, Spencer, a relative of yours. Spencer's, is she your aunt? I think she is, Caitlin Flanagan.
She is.
She has a wonderful thread going, which she just instigated. So when you're prepping for Black Friday, go look at Caitlin Flanagan. She's at Caitlin with a L-I-N and a T, C-A-I-T-L-I-N Pacific. That's her handle. And she asked for book recommendations with Black Friday coming up. And there are lots of good ones in the thread from all of her followers. So I discovered some new ones that I want to buy. So go check it out.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Yes. And you won't be sorry if you follow my Aunt Katie. She's truly one of the greats. Okay, that's it for us and then some. We're hanging up our hats. We hope you do too. We wish you a very, very happy Thanksgiving from all of us at Claremont and at the American Mind in general. I'm always afraid to speak on behalf of Claremont, but I think I can confidently say on behalf of the entire Institute that we wish you and your family and yours the very best Thanksgiving, celebrating all the good things and this great country. We will be back in your feeds next week, but for now, thank you for listening to the Roundtable. If you'd like to learn more about all that we do, you can visit our websites at americanmind.org, ClaremontReviewofBooks.com, and our DC-based Center for the American Way of Life at dc.claremont.org. You can donate to support our work at claremont.org/donate. And don't forget to rate, review, share, subscribe, do all the things that help a podcast to grow. Let your family know about us. Maybe don't talk about the Roundtable at the Thanksgiving dinner table unless you're surrounded by like-minded friends. But hey, we can't stop you. It's a free country. Most of all, we're grateful to our production and engineering crew, the brothers G, Jake, and Ryan Gannon, and we are grateful to all of you and for all of you who listen. We will talk to you next week.